You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And as I mentioned to you earlier, we are going now to spend some brief time on the matter of judgment debt. I'd like to say thank you once again to Professor Kwesi Enin, Director, Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research, Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center, Professor Gladys Nyako-Ansah, Co-Principal Investigator, University of York, University of Ghana, Galamsey Research Team, Dr. John Osai-Kwapong is Political Scientist, Democracy and Development Fellow, CDD Ghana, and he is still with us. Martin Pebu is lawyer and rights activist. He is also right here with us. We are joined by Dr. Theresa Blankson, Fellow in charge of Finance and Economic Pillar, Center for Social Justice, CSJ. Thank you for making time to join us this morning. Now, I've got many messages still on the Galamsey issue. I can read just maybe one or two and then we move on. Someone was asking that whether I could read back the message again that I referred to that was from a military person. Yeah, so a military person sent a message to one person and who sent it to me and says that Martin is right. It's all about leadership. I am a soldier who took part in the so-called Operation Halt, and it's very sad to see a military general taking money from these illegal miners and allowing them to continue. We sometimes have to provide security to some illegal miners during that Operation Halt duties. You remember in the course of that, issues came up. Some persons were supposed to be indicted also for taking money. Martin, so hopefully we win, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. But Sam,
yeah.
It remains to be said, the 500 excavators, or even the number is no longer 500, when Frimpong Boateng was in charge, where are they? Where are they? You know, I've heard anecdotal evidence about some public officers having taken some for their personal uses and the rest, when we should have used
the time when we're hearing a party here in Sika. And so Galamsey must go on, while the president was giving us all the promises about fighting this, you know, with all that he could muster. This show is brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go. Star Assurance, your solid partner. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. Fenat, Ghana. Think wood, think Fenat. Duraplus, how you get your water matters. Remember, where Duraplus goes, water flows. St. Thomas Eye Hospital, providing excellence in eye care. Hoptel, everything you. And Miway Insurance, you dial *165# on the MTN to join. Right, so let's me begin this discussion by going straight on the phone lines to engage with Dr. Theresa Blankson, who is Fellow in charge of Finance and Economy Pillar, the Center for Social Justice, CSJ. Thank you for joining us once again. So Joy News has been trying to follow the issues of judgment debt, and remember how it became a big political campaign issue. And the NPP actually put in its manifesto how it was going to fight judgment debt. Under President Mills, we had the, sole commissioner, to look into inordinate judgment debt, Justice Yao Opao, and he authored that voluminous document that tells us about how all of these things happen, including the Supreme Court telling us clearly how some of these things are cooked. In the Woyomi case, more particularly, how they are cooked. Now, Joy News have been doing right to information, and through that has done this report where it finds that the Akufo-Addo government has spent 125 million Ghana cedis on judgment debts, which means that he surpassed what was paid by John Mahama's government by 56 million. Doc, why should we be concerned about this? Judgment debts will be inevitable in any country that has to deal in transactions with people, correct?
Yes. I think this is a very important point that you make, that judgment debt can be expected in the business of government. We cannot avoid that, but I think it's the volume or the magnitude that we need to be concerned about, and also the persistence with which we continue to deal with colossal sums like these huge numbers that are being churned out. And when you think about it within the context of the enormous developmental challenges that the economy faces, particularly when you talk about healthcare, when you talk about education, where we have still in this day and age with pupils being taught under trees, school buildings in bad shapes, and also when you think about the fact that even our health facilities are not well adequately strengthened in a way to take care of the population. Within that framework, considering also the high youth unemployment rate that we have, high levels of poverty, I think it makes sense to really think about the numbers that have been churned out. So I think it is a worrying trend. And my expectation after we did our analysis for the 2000 to 2019 period was that this was going to be nipped in the bud, but we are still hearing the story.
What is of interest when you look at the story as done by Joy News now?
I think I was really impressed with the analysis. I just had a quick question related to that, and maybe you could help clarify it to me. I'm not sure the numbers, whether they were taken within the context of a particular year. Sometimes you want to just make sure you are comparing apples to apples. And so we always want to make sure that the numbers are reflecting a specific year, CPI. So I'm not sure. Given the numbers that have been churned out from Joy FM, I'm not sure whether the comparison was based on a specific year in CD equivalent terms of, let's say, 2022. Then, of course, again, it becomes a huge issue regardless. But I just wanted to clarify that point from you. Maybe you could help me.
Right. So let me just get to what the Joy News story tells us is what for them may be worrying. So as far as their concern will be, first of all, let me just read this, that the information that they got reveals that government has since 2017 paid judgment debt totaling 125 million Ghana cedis. The highest judgment debt was paid in 2018, and that was an amount of 30.9 million cedis paid to Jubilee Tractors and Assembly Plant Limited. This arose from a case filed against the National Security Council in 2017. An amount of 29.5 million cedis was paid to NDK Financial Services. A close comparison of the various years shows that the highest amount paid since the NPP took over government was in 2017, when payments totaled 54 million Ghana cedis. Now, they look at your research that you did and how the figures shows figures that we should do something about, without which we will have a situation on our hands as you try to project in your research. Then they go to look at an announcement done by the Minister of Finance as regards what we owe, and I'm sure that you have seen that, and then cannot seem to reconcile that with the present figure. And so that, for the Joy News team, is what is curious.
Oh, right. That it's very interesting, because in our report we noted that for 2017 alone, the amount that was outstanding was, I think, about 417 million. So, I mean, even if this is what they provided to them, I mean, if the inconsistency in the data is a huge issue when it comes to analyzing some of these issues that, borders on waste of resources. And so to the best of my knowledge, I believe that this amount that is being quoted in your report pretty much was something that we even captured as outstanding and was supposed to be paid. And if it was really paid for 2017, at the time we did our reports, we didn't capture that. Right. Because the data is so spotty. And as you know, we had to pour through over 600 pages of the sole commissioner's report.
That's right.
In addition to looking at the Auditor General's report from 2012 to 2012 to date, to try and capture some of the things. And it's so difficult because we don't have a database that can be used to glean what is going on. There is no register that takes account of the contracts that government is entering into, not just government, and its departments and agencies are entering into. We don't have any record of some of these, and they are scattered all over the place. So I'm not surprised about the discrepancy in terms of what the minister said in Parliament and even what was provided to you. That is a huge issue related to transparency. And of course, we need to talk about that, right? Because when it comes to governance, transparency is a very important issue. And I think this is one that is lacking when it comes to this issue of judgment debt.
Right. Please hold on for me. And Matt, in the official, is it the Hansard of 13 July 2019, Mr. Forson asked the question, Mr. Speaker, the question was for the Honourable Minister to give us the exact amount that has been paid from 2017 to date. In his answer, he said that they have paid approximately Ghana cedis 94 million yearly. Could the Honourable Minister specifically tell us how much they paid for the years 2017, 2018, and so far, 2019? That was the spirit of the question. Then Ken Ofori-Atta responds, Mr. Speaker, I do not have the breakdown, but the to-date payment, as I mentioned, is 256,267. Then Mr. Forson comes back, says, Mr. Speaker, could the Honourable Minister provide us with a breakdown for the payment of the 283 million that they have paid so far in terms of the beneficiaries? This is important. Then Mr. Speaker says this question was on the quantum. So look at the amount. If you want all those matters on persons or bodies who were paid to, it must reflect in the question. What's your appreciation of the issue of the judgment debt and the way it comes up once again?
Yeah, so this is a matter, there are some things we can't run away from. As you said, as long as government runs, there will be some judgment debt.
Right.
Some errant public officers may cause judgment debt. So I think the sole commissioner made some recommendations, and it's even already part of our law. If we find that it is the fault of the negligence of a certain public officer, and we should surcharge him. I think the law allows that, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that's good. So perhaps we should open the debate again on some of these judgment debts specifically. How were they caused? So that we will know, and our efforts being made to surcharge the public officers involved, because that is very critical. And then we should give that a lot of traction so that it would serve as notice to other public officers to up their game so that we don't...
The issue they are raising in their, reportage,
Yes.
they wrote to the Attorney General.
Yeah.
The Attorney General says, I'm not the right place. You should go to the Ministry of Finance. And that is correct, isn't it?
Yeah.
So they go to the Ministry of Finance, and the Ministry of Finance writes to them and gives them a total amount of 153, 125.
25, yes.
And then they reconcile that with what he said in Parliament in July 2019.
Yes.
And during that time, he gave 283 million.
Yes. Yes, okay, so coming to I know that's the heart of the matter. Maybe I should have gone to it first.
Right.
Yes. So this contradiction is perplexing, to say the least. The gap is too wide, too wide. Because how can you say as of 2019 that is 283 million, then in 2022 it turns out to be 125 million? That
you have paid.
Yes, I mean, it is irreconcilable. And as soon as I read it yesterday, when Samuel Odame sent me the Hansard thing, I was like, hey, is this also going to be like the COVID funds? You remember the COVID funds when the minority tabled some papers and they had to go and account for? Some billions could not be accounted for. You see that thing? So it led to an uproar. I was like, are we going to continue like this? So I think the finance minister needs to up his game. And that reminds me, this other accounting for, remember this story that Manasseh did, and that's one of my favorites, the fake fumigation.
Right.
The fake COVID fumigation that local government says they spent about 500 million. Finance minister goes, yes, we accept there are two phases. And then he said the phase one is about 125 million. They asked him, phase two, he doesn't have figures. You see? Of course, it appears to me sitting here that he's not interested in getting the figures for phase two because then it will increase the amount spent. But the Minister of Local Government says phase one and phase two, 500 million of public funds. That's a fumigation that we are saying is fake, and that money went into private pockets because there was already an existing contract for such fumigation to be done. You see, so it's just showing a story of opacity, the finance minister not being that transparent. COVID funds, judgment debt, fumigation. And I'm sure there are other stories. It doesn't bode well for us. I hear they are taking steps in Parliament to censure him, right? They're going to do a vote of censure by our constitution. Of course, then the president has a chance to remove him or not. But it's clear that for the finance minister, he's long outlived his usefulness. Yes, that one is very clear to us. And so we shouldn't encourage such impunity. The Constitution says, the Supreme Court has said in so many cases, the values of our Constitution, the spirit, probity, accountability, and so on and so forth. These two, probity and accountability. Right. You see a number of Supreme Court decisions. And so we should be interested in probity and accountability.
Well, it's an interesting country, is it not? We're hearing some people actually suggest that the call that you Citizens Coalition are making on the Auditor General is unnecessary. Leave the Auditor General alone. When he does his reports, he should just take it to Parliament and then let's all go to sleep.
No.
Now, Dr. Theresa Blankson, does this also come to you as something curious that needs to be gone into, or you have a way of isolating and an explanation to it? That in July, was it, he tells Parliament that 2019, that total spent so far was 283 million. And then Joy News does an RTI request, and in answer to that, to the same minister's place, and the answer they gave is that the total that has been spent or paid is 125 million Ghana cedis.
Great. I think personally the issue is that we do not have a database, to help us keep track of these numbers. For the most part, like I mentioned, if it isn't because of the sole commissioner's report that detailed most of the information starting from, 1976, where we were able to get some information related to how some of the judgment debt came to be. It would have been hard for us to even get numbers for our analysis. And so the lack of database to, keep track on what is happening perhaps could have contributed to the oversight, I would say, on the part of the finance minister, giving a different number compared to what was furnished to Joy FM. My sense is if we had also gone, for the data, we probably would have gotten different numbers. And that is what is worrying, because if you really want to restore faith in governance, then you need to be transparent in these issues. And so for the most part, we need to have a register that is detailing all these contracts that are occurring. Also, we need to have a database indicating the judgment debts that have been issued, what is paid, what is outstanding. We need a database to get some of these things going, and it should be made public, so that we all have access to some of these information. And then, of course, we talk about it.
So I'll get back to, because you have taken time at the CSJ, the Center for Social Justice, to go through the entire document that was done by Justice Apao. And I realized that after that, you actually took steps. You went to the special prosecutor. You also went to the chief of staff, I guess, asking that certain things ought to be done because some of those debts have not been pursued and ought to be pursued. I'll return to what you will say ought to be done and to avoid this. Now, Dr. Osai Kwapong, how are you able to do a reconciliation, if you attempted, of what the minister's figure he gave as at 2019, the updated, up-to-date payment was 283 million Ghana cedis, and then today the figure he gives for 2017 to 2022 is 125.
Yeah, that's the inconsistency, as has been pointed out, is worrying. I mean, I would want to hope that it's an error that can be, that can be corrected. But then again, it's, for me, it's very troubling that in such a setting, such a major discrepancy would occur. But I'm just hoping that it is an error that can be corrected and can be rectified so that the true amount, the actual amount of what has really been paid or not paid or what is outstanding, the record will be set straight. Because again, as I keep mentioning, in an environment of mistrust in state institutions and public officials, the last thing you also want to see happening is some of these inconsistencies, because it just deepens that mistrust. So hopefully the record will be set straight in a very transparent manner so that we can, even someone like Lawyer Martin Pebu can have some restored hope and faith in the finance minister.
That's a move.
Right. So what will you suggest from observing this conundrum, so to speak, over a long time? There have been times when people have said, this is clearly cooked. And not just people have said, Supreme Court judges who have investigated a whole judgment debt matter come to the conclusion that this was as though a brigade had been set up to create, loot, and share. How do we avoid it? If it's avoidable, really, I must be asking how to minimize it.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, as was earlier on mentioned, the state would always, engage individuals, organizations in procuring goods, services, etc., etc. I've always said that this whole judgment debt thing, for me, boils down to the manner in which we award contracts, but also the manner in which we abrogate these contracts. And then, like you also described in some of the in the sole commissioner's report, some of these are even doubtful in nature. So the ones that, quote unquote, were properly executed contracts, but perhaps administratively something went wrong in the abrogation of it. I always say that you need an administrative solution that says, okay, if there is genuine grounds upon which a contract must be abrogated, what are the proper steps? What sort of advice do we get from the Attorney General, from the legal departments within a particular state agency to make sure that it is done properly so we don't end up in a judgment debt situation? If it is one of these doubtful ones or one of these ones where it's like it's somebody's willful error or something like that, then you can turn to the law. We have laws about causing financial loss to the state. We also have the power of the Attorney General, the Auditor General to disallow and surcharge. I think that I believe that certainty of punishment, as Professor Kwesi Prempeh would call it in the fight against corruption, it is one of those things that I believe would provide the incentive to minimize some of these errant ways and errors that result in judgment debts. If people are not sure that they will be punished for causing financial loss to the state, then they have no incentive not to cause financial loss to the state.
So, Martin, let's begin from the solutions. And some of them are really curious. You remember this one that the state was supposed to be owing some money from 2007 to NDK, and then they went into, and then they were seeking 1.2 billion, was it? Then the Attorney General, Godfrey Dame, came in, went to the Supreme Court, challenged the process, and eventually the court said the state had only 14,000 cedis extra to pay, not 1.2 billion. So I asked myself, how did that come about? That someone would say, this is how much you owe me. But for the intervention to the Supreme Court to challenge it, would have been paying that much, right?
Yes. Sam, and there are still people like that in present day Ghana. There are still such brigades. They create loot and share. So Justice Duche was right. I'm sure at the time he was writing it, maybe he didn't see it to continue like this because, of course, the Supreme Court was hoping that we will nip this matter in the bud. But that's not it. It's still happening. And Sam, even as part of the solutions, the first part of the solution is that, look, we should begin to reckon the judgment debts we are aware of, but which have not yet been paid. The biggest I'm worried about is, the power purchase agreement, they take or pay. That Ghana, we lost. And it's over $240 million. So I'm surprised that the arbitration award came out. It's public. We read Newsfile. You even did a program on it. So if to date we are saying we've paid $125 million, that judgment debt, what's happened to it? Because we lost the case and we're to pay. Or is it that we have now taken that the power, we have taken it? So I think that's something that maybe I'll be interested in also filing this RTR request to find out, because that's huge. So about 200.
There was this other huge one that I remember that Newsfile had to discuss. It was a $15 million over. It was concerning Galamsey judgments. And the Attorney General heard it around, Randy Abbey mentioned it on Newsfile. Then he joined us. Then subsequently, a week or so later, he went back to court and set that judgment aside. So that was another $15 million that would have been paying.
Excellent. So this one, the power purchase agreement, the one we lost, the arbitration, is over $240 million. If you convert that into Ghana cedis, that's over $1 billion.
Right.
That's over $1 billion. So we should be interested, because the more we don't pay, if we delay in paying, interest piles up.
Right.
So that's it. So the first part of the solution is that we should reckon, maybe we should have a discussion, which are the ones that have not been paid, but we really lost, and it's money we have to pay, so that we find out, as we discuss, we may find other solutions. That's it. And then two, so the way forward is, like we're saying, as much as possible, the state should engage CSOs, people who have capacity in the various sectors. Don't just say, oh, government alone, I have my experts. I think there's this famous thing that some CSOs pointed something out to the president and said, oh, he doesn't need them. He also has his own experts.
That's right.
But we've said that one man cannot embrace the baobab tree. That tree is so huge.
That's right.
So to say that wisdom doesn't reside in one head. So let's engage more. And in engaging, you'll find more experts coming forward with solutions. And so we should also be very prudent. Let the procurement laws work. Let sole sourcing not be the, the main way of procuring, because we've already agreed sole sourcing is what? Thievery.
Yes.
So for every contract that's...
According to Gabi Asarachi.
Excellent.
Right. Now, Dr. Theresa Blankson, I don't know what you will say. First, you went to the OSP, you went to the Chief of Staff over the Justice Apao thing that you went over and over. What are the learnings? What is it that you can share that ought to be done? There are some public officers who just get us into needless judgment debts.
Thank you so much. And I think my colleagues have all said great points or made great points in relation to what needs to be done. And I think the key thing, as they have mentioned, is that we need to even be aware of what are the numbers, right? In addition to that, we need to also be reminded of exactly how these judgment debts came to be, right? And so from our analysis, we found out again that negligence or what we would call non-adherence to timely execution of government business. So in that context, the question is, what do we need to do, related to that? Yes, of course, processes may need to change in terms of handling of government businesses. So we've actually talked about, putting in place institutional measures that will ensure that some of these problems do not reoccur. And so the other thing that we also noted was the blatant disregard for public procurement laws. So like has been mentioned, again, it is important that we enforce them. We need to resurrect, the enforcement of some of these laws. We cannot just allow public officials to just make decisions on contracts without enforcement. Bringing the Auditor General into the picture when some of these contracts are being written down and all that. Illegal abrogation of contracts was another that we found. And so in this particular case, again, you want to really understand why the need to abrogate the contract in the first place. And if you are doing so, you want to do it in the interest of the public. And so think about the cost and benefits of actually abrogating the contract. If the benefits would outweigh the cost, then of course it makes sense to continue to do that. Then the last one, which was really important to us, was the corrupt activities by public officials. Like you have all mentioned, sometimes you would wonder whether some of these numbers are even cooked, right? Because there were instances, for instance, where the Ghana Post had actually gone for a loan and they were going into a contract with a particular business. I think it was Skyline business. They were into money transactions and the like. And they did what we call loot and share. And eventually the debt became one that the government had to pay. We had to take, money from the public purse to settle it. If we do have laws that are supposed to be followed when public officials are engaged in corrupt activities, we need to hold them accountable to that. And to the extent that we are not doing that and allowing people to go scot-free, there is an incentive for people to continue behaving that way. So the point made earlier by one of my colleagues was that we need to incentivize, the public officials in a way that will prevent this from coming.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Theresa Blankson is Fellow in charge of Finance and Economic Pillar with the Center for Social Justice, CSJ. And Dr. John Osai Kwapong is Political Scientist, Democracy and Development Fellow, CDD Ghana. Martin Pebu is lawyer and rights activist. I'm Samson Ladi Anyanini.